Not sure why that was doing that, but greetings and welcome back once again. This is Imuna. I pray everybody. My little intro was playing Stucky for a minute. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Imuna. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Those who will be joining us on the replay, welcome, welcome, welcome to the discussion. We are going to have a conversation. I want to say it early. We're going to have a conversation tomorrow, preferably if all goes well. We're going to have a celebrity stylist, celebrity makeup artist who's been in the industry for over 30 years. And she's going to come and share her thoughts on what's going on right now in the culture. So you guys stay tuned for that one. And in preparation for that discussion, in true Imuna fashion, I wanted to go back a little bit and take a look at some of the things that have been quoting in the bonnet conversation. We have a habit of just brushing over topics, just really, I guess sometimes going into them in depth is too much for us. And we kind of jet ski over, we kind of hopscotch, double dutch over a large amount of topics, a myriad of topics, all at the same time. And on the surface, it sounds like, yeah, it's making sense. Those are all the dots that are on the table. And if we connect it like this, but the problem is with all of these dots that are these topics that are so in depth, when we don't correct them correctly or properly, we get the wrong picture. And often people connect the dots in a way intentionally to give us the wrong understanding and the wrong picture. And so I find that it's frustrating for me, a person that likes to go in depth, and some will say too much in depth on a topic, but I kind of like to get a comprehensive understanding of what I'm looking at. It agitates me to no end when we don't do history justice. And this is to this conversation that I saw brought up in some of the videos concerning head wraps and the laws that were enacted around them. So we're going to go in Solonomics fashion. We're going to go to the Tignon Laws, or the conversation around what it was called. And we're going to look at, because this is the thing with history, right? It's about, and I know we know, but sometimes, it's about what happened, who did it happen to, why did it happen, the context and the effects of what actually happened. And so we play the whole, it kind of looks like it, so I'm going to say it is. So with this Tignon conversation, I said, let me go back I know I read it in times past, but let me go back. A lot of times we have to go back, right? Let me go back and take a look again because I found something fascinating that it's a point that oftentimes when it bolsters an argument, then we stick to it. And when it doesn't, we jump off. So I'm going to share my screen. It's late and I wanted to come on here earlier, but we're going to make it do what it do. And I'm going to try not to stay too long. I see some of these live streams and they be going really long. Y'all, I don't know how y'all do it. But let me make sure I'm showing the right screen because the last time I did this, I was reading, but I was showing the wrong screen. Yeah, I'm showing the right screen. So Tignon, right? Or some people say tiyon, is a type of head wrap covering. Let me turn down my screen because it's a little too bright for me. A large piece of material tied or wrapped around the head to form a kind of turban that somewhat resembles the West African gele. And if you click on that, you'll see the West African part of the headdress. And I'll click on it just so we can just see what's going on here. Okay, there we go. And the gele is, when you're wearing your clothes and you're doing your thing, it usually matches your outfit, the head tie. So the head tie is not a new concept. We can all agree that the head tie is not a new concept. This is on the tail of the bonnet conversation. Like I said, we're going to have more, but some people are being disingenuous. So let's keep rocking. It was worn by Creole women of African descent in Louisiana. The very second sentence, when we're going to cite the Tignon Laws, we have to be honest to say that this was passed towards Creole women of African descent. That means they were mixed. They were quadroon, they were octoroon, they were mulattoes. Now, when it comes to the slavery conversation, when someone wants to say that you didn't have the same experience, they say, "Oh, I'm going to separate you because you had a better advantage." And now, when you want to cite Tignon laws, you're going to pull everybody in the pot like Creole gumbo. We gotta pick a lane. We gotta pick a struggle, and we gotta be honest, right? It was worn by Creole women of African descent in Louisiana, beginning in the Spanish colonial period and continued to a lesser extent to the present day. Now, this law is what I heard one of the sisters citing, and I was like, wait a minute. So, the Tignon Law, this headdress was the result of sumptuary laws passed in 1786 under the administration of Governor Estevan Rodriguez Miro, called the Tignon Laws. They prescribed and enforced oppressive public dress for female gens de couleur in colonial society. Pause. So we're not just talking about general enslaved peoples. We're not talking about at this time English law, because at that time Louisiana and those places were not ruled by the English. We have to pay attention to what time in history this is when we're going to quote this particular law. Jean de Colos, if we click it, it says, in context of the history of slavery, in context, in the Americas, free people of color, in French, Jean de Couleurs Libres, or Spanish, Jean de Couleurs Libre, were people mixed African, European, and sometimes Native American descendants who were not enslaved. There were a distinct group of free people of color in French colonies, including Louisiana and settlements in the Caribbean, Santo Domingue, which is Haiti, St. Lucia, Dominica, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. Why is this important? Let's go back. So this particular law that I saw somebody quoting and other people quoting was not just for lack of a better term, this was a different segment of society, and this was a head wrap law for different reasons. Because there are many articles that came up, and I'm like, wait a minute now. We're gonna quote. Let's quote all the way. Let's keep going. Historian Virginia M. Gould notes that Miro, which was the governor, hoped the law would control women. So that part is right. Quote, who had become too light-skinned or who dressed too elegantly, who or in reality competed too freely with women, white women, for status and thus threatened the social order. So pause. This law cannot be equated to the bonnet law or the bonitocracy conversation, or the desire. It's a false equivalency, because what was happening here was that there was a different segment of society that these women fell in, that they were already, as for lack of a better word, some will say, swirling with the European, and they had been bred out to a certain degree that it was very difficult to tell whether who they were. In addition to that, they carried themselves in a way that they were in direct competition to the European woman. I'll read it again. It says that the law was meant to control women, not just general slave population women, these particular women, mulatto women, quadroon women, and octoroon women, who had become too light skinned, or who dressed too elegantly, or who in reality competed too freely with white women for status, and thus threaten the social order. So they were trying to control a certain segment of women. There's a little video clip I have, and then we're going to continue to read a little bit here. So when we are bringing this up, to me, it's like, hey, shalom, sis. It's like, come on now. What are we doing? Like, we got to call it what it is and then move from there. But again, when it suits the people to make a point, they just throw everything in the pot. And then when you want to separate, oh, you're not this, you're not that, you're not really black, you didn't have the experience, then you can't misappropriate it. Wouldn't their experience and then say it's your experience, because now it suits the narrative, right? Let me play this little clip with a little bit about. This was from a movie. I didn't see the whole movie, but I did see the clip. I thought it was interesting. So this clip is from a movie called, what's the name of the movie? It just escaped my mind. I'll play the clip and remember the name of the movie in a minute.
Educated in the convents, but the quadroon beauties, for obvious reasons, cannot be. So, a friend of mine through my friend, you could arrange, so to speak, a small class in her petit maison on Esplanade Street, no?
Therese and Marie and my daughter, Carl.
Monsieur. Monsieur does have a name.
Okay, Caleb. Caleb Wycliffe. I didn't really.
So that was a quick clip illustrating um, this relationship of what was going on in Louisiana and the Creoles, and how the women were looking to the men, and the fact that, and we're going to read it in a little bit, it was a whole different world. They had um, these balls that they would throw. They had women, octoroon, quadroon, mulatto women looking to marry Europeans, but it was a left-hand marriage, which is plasage, which is another situation. So there was a whole culture down there, basically. So this particular law is legislating the culture, the things that were happening amongst the people in Louisiana specifically, in this particular case. So let's continue to read. Um, And you see how the old boy was like, aha, he was all. I don't think that's the clip I wanted to show. I thought I had downloaded another clip, but my bad. Y'all kind of got the point. So let me go ahead. It says Miro, intent of having the Tignon mark inferiority, had a somewhat different effect. So he wanted to kind of trying to taper down their beauty, try to taper down the way in which they were presenting themselves in public, and it had a different effect. According to historian Carolyn Long, who noted, instead of being considered a badge of dishonor, the tignon became a fashion statement. The bright reds, blues, and yellows of the scarves and the imaginative wrappings technique employed by their wearers are said to have enhanced the beauty of color women. So he meant it for bad, and it made it worse, right? The women who were targets of this decree, the women who were targets of this decree, were inventive and imaginative. A specific subset of women were the target of this particular decree. I keep I keep saying that because we're going back to history, right? They decorated Tignons with their jewels and ribbons and used the finest available material to wrap their hair. So they weren't slaves, they weren't enslaved, right? In other words, they effectively reinterpreted the law without technically breaking the law. And they continue to be pursued by men because these men, these European men, these Frenchmen and Spanish were pursuing them and making them uh, legitimately illegitimate wives, right? They were in these Plasage type relationship. They was the left hand, the wife of the left hand, the one up the street who had been, she was a kept woman, but she wasn't the quote official wife. Using that scholarship, historian Ferdinand F. Eaton, a Louisiana native, suggests sagging may be an ironic and modern twist on the defiant Afro-Creole women's protest movement. Eaton, did I miss something? How did they jump in with the Eaton? Anyway, Eaton opines that while Miro's 1786 edict singled out women for acting, quote, too white, end quote, a modern day version of sumptuary law, i.e., efforts to prohibit the practice of sagging, arguably singles out largely black males for not acting white enough. Okay, they jumped the ship, so we'll just hold on a second. There was something that else that I wanted to share. Hold on. How are you guys doing today? There was something else here. It was on this page. Okay, we're gonna come back and read this at another time. I think I started reading it during the Lev project, but I'm gonna come back and read it at another time, which is the Code Noires, right? It says that the Tignon Law was a 1786 law enacted by the Spanish governor of Louisiana, Esteban Rodriguez Miro, that forced black women to wear a tignon headscarf. The law was intended to halt Plasage unions and tie freed black women to those who were enslaved. But the women who followed the law had been described as turning the headdress into a mark of distinction. Now, Plasage, not sure how many of us has studied Plasage. Plasage was a recognized extra-legal system in French and Spanish slave colonies of North America, including the Caribbean, by which ethnic European men entered into civil unions with non-Europeans of African, Native American, and mixed race descent. So this divest movement conversation is not a new one because there's nothing new under the sun. The term comes from the French placer, meaning to place with. The women were not legally recognized as wives, but were known as placees. These relationships were recognized among the free people of color as margines de la main gauche or left-hand marriages, right? They became institutionalized with contracts or negotiations that settled properly on the women and their children, and in some cases gave them freedom if they were enslaved. The system flourished throughout the French and Spanish colonial periods, reaching its zenith between 1769 and 1803. Now, keep in mind that this law, the Tignon Law, comes in, what was it, 17, I don't even want to lie, I don't know. The Tignon Law, it's important that it reaches zenith through 1769 and 1803, but this Tignon Law comes in 1786, right? So while it's doing its thing, it's causing a problem for the European women who are there. And so this governor is trying to put laws in place so that the mulatto, the mixed women, won't take all of the eligible men, right? All of the quote high value men. So the Plasage thing is another story. That movie, Feast of All Saints, uh, illustrates this conversation of Plasage and what was really going on. Okay, let me read a little more. Now, this is the part that a lot of people don't. We like when people just talk off the top of their head and make up stuff when they go along. It says the Code Noir, we're going to read that another time, or Black Code, was a French law that restricted the lives of people of color in French colonies. Because we all know that there were different people who ruled the French, the Spanish, the English, and the Portuguese, and the Dutch, not as much as the rest, but the Dutch was in there too. So each one of them had different laws depending. So the mixing in between the French and the Spanish and the natives were more. This is what they produced a lot of, and actually to a certain degree wanted to validate some of these unions with the Plasage conversation. It had been created to apply in the Caribbean, this Code Noir, the Black Code, in 1685, but was extended to Louisiana in 1724. Spanish authorities instituted a similar law first in 1769 and again in 1778. By 1786, the same guy, Esteban Rodriguez Miro, was the Spanish governor of Louisiana. He disliked actions some Black women had taken, considering them to, quote, show too much luxury in their bearing, while white women began to urge Miro to act to restrict the fashion of non whites. So you had the European woman behind, in this case, the Spanish, behind the impetus behind, hey, regulate them because they're not on our level. So I'm not saying that at this time Europeans weren't regulating melanated people, but it was a certain set of melanated people that, if we're going to be honest, when you're having certain conversations, people tend to exclude when it's feasible and include when it's feasible. It says Miro added an item to a decree that he was already going to issue, the June 2nd, 1786 decree. And these decrees, boy, when you read these decrees, you're like, yo, y'all was doing a lot. Formally tied the Bandu de Buen Gobierno, or Proclamation of Good Government, sorry for if I chopped that up, stated that women of color had to wear a scarf or handkerchief over their hair as a visible sign of belonging to the slave class, whether they were enslaved or not. So many enslaved peoples were already wearing headscarves for the purposes of keeping dirt and debris and sweat out of your face because you're outside. And so they're like, okay, just to show that you have some affiliation, you too have to mark yourself. So he says, specify that the negros mulatas y cuadranos can no longer have feathers nor jewelry in their hair. So these particular set were the oppressed set, not in that way. You had jewelry, you had feathers, and he said specifically negros mulattos, the black mulattoes or the quadroons can no longer. So he he took away the feather and the jewelry, right? Instead, they must wear their hair plain or wear pañuelos if they are of higher status as they have been accustomed to. I wanted to put that in there. I wanted to put that in. And then I want to read something. Oh, let me just continue. Effect, because right, we talk about what is the effect, what was the law, and what was the cause and effect. So the cause, according to some would say that they didn't know their place, right? And they were coming into other spaces in society and disrupting the balance. The effect of that cause was another law to effect change. And then this is the effect that they're saying. During the 18th century, laws restricting what Black people could wear were not uncommon. And I was going to read, but I'm not going to do it today. The Negro laws, I'll read that another time. Miro hoped that the law would halt Plasage unions, same thing we just read about, and tie free Black women to those who were enslaved, while white women in New Orleans initially stopped wearing their hair in the style. Empress Josephine of France eventually adopted the headpiece. So it's the same thing with what we're seeing now. You do something as a punitive measure, then melanated people come and they put some sauce on it, and then now everybody wants to do what was before not something to be done. It's crazy, right? Empress Josephine of France eventually adopted the headpiece, and it became considered haute culture. So this culture vulture kind of conversation, or the misappropriating of culture, again, another thing that's not new. In the early 19th century, before decreasing in popularity in 1830s. Let's click on her and see what she looking like. So she was getting her hair did all up in the front with the little pin curls vibration going on. Let me switch. If anybody have any questions or comments, feel free to share. And then we're gonna click. Let me click off of this and then go to the other thing that I wanted to share. I want to put that in there because I was sent a video and I'm like, okay, you just briefly mentioned Tignon, but you ain't take us in there though. You know, it's like we driving through, but we don't get to get out the car and find out what really happened. It's like we get the story that's going to feed a certain narrative. And the people are bringing it up to support the bonnet conversation when the Tignon laws, the women, the Creole women, they took what was supposed to be oppressive. Let's say that you gave them a bonnet, but they didn't make it look like a bonnet. Like they put themselves together. They came outside to make it look like they were together. So that doesn't even support the argument. It doesn't support the argument. Let me go to this next thing. I'm not going to stay long. Not going to stay long. Okay, I found this because y'all know I like supporting documentation. This is from Louisiana. This took place in Louisiana, right? So this is from Louisiana Digital Library. Each state has their own files. It's really cool if you're interested in this kind of stuff, where a lot of them have scanned in and made digital and accessible a lot of these older documents. So in my study, study of slavery and just study of history, I found these two to be very helpful. Right? Hold on, let me make sure everything's different. Anywho, so this is at Louisiana Digital Library. You can go to that site online. I'll even put the link in the box so y'all can peruse it at your own leisure. And we're going to read a little bit real quick. It's not going to take long. Okay. This was from 1891. So this is even closer to the phenomenon. Remember, it said it was 1786, right? So 130 or 20 something years later, they're talking about the origin of Tignon from 1891, not from 2021, where people are remixing it so that they can support the desire to wear bonnets. Hold on one second. So we read through the Tignon. So this is 1891, and this is from the actual place, Louisiana. Let me make it bigger, because y'all know I don't like straining my eyes. Let's make it bigger. It's a one-page thing. Come on, man. Can I make it bigger? Oh wait, let me look. Is it up here? I was reading it before and it made me make it bigger. All right, y'all. I'm just gonna have to try my best here. I'm still trying to make it bigger. Okay. It's origin of the tignon, a headdress worn by the old mammy. This is what this paper is saying. June 18th, 1891. The weekly. I can't even see that. I'm gonna have to read it off my phone. I had it on my phone. Hold on. I had it on my phone. Let me put my phone up and try to read it from here. Because this joint is messing with my eyes. I can't mess around like I used to. Let's see here. Yeah, it makes it bigger on my phone. Why doesn't it make it bigger on the computer? Anywho, let me make it bigger. So it says here in Catherine Cole's article on the dear old black mammy of antebellum days in, but they put antebellum. That's hilarious. That's why I was like antebellum. That's the slavery days. In Sunday's Picayune, there is a query as to the origin of the tignon, with which these good mammies turban their stately heads. The fashion is said to have been brought here from the island of Martinique and San Domingo, and this assertion is born out of the existence in families who came here from these points, of portraits representing their ancestress with beautiful madras handkerchiefs bound about their hair. After 1786, however, the Madras turban or tignon was entirely laid aside by ladies. This change was owing to a manifesto issued in that year by Don Estevan Miro, the then governor of Louisiana. Licentiousness, this is according to this person writing this article in 1891, had become very prevalent in the colony, and the extravagant dresses of the pretty free quadroons, what is that? Outrivaled that of the ladies of the city. Okay, they added to their attractions by wearing costly jewels and nodding plumes on their head. Governor Myra sought to render them less conspicuous and attractive by ordering them to wear only plain handkerchief as headdresses, a great blow to their vanity. But they brought their blacks, what did I say, Rachel? Stressed forward in wave bandeaus, fastened the handkerchief, intended as a badge of their condition, high on the back of their heads, tied its ends in a, what is this? A cultish style, and looked prettier than ever. So she sounded like she was mad. Whoever's writing this, who wrote this article? For the bright hues of the Madras harmonized artistically with the mellow duskiness of their complexion and their dark eyes. Thus were Miro's efforts in the cause of virtue frustrated. It is to be supposed our mammies acquired the habit of wearing handkerchiefs from the slaves brought to the colony by planters from Martinique and other islands. Very, very, very interesting stuff. So that's another witness, 1891 witness. Whoever's writing this sounds salty, by the way, of what it was intended for, who it was intended for, why it didn't work, and the issue of having access to the quote high value, I'm putting high value in there, male population. Did anybody else hear that? Did you hear what I heard? They had issues with these women who, as we saw in that little clip, the man was lusting after these mulatto women and these quadroon women who were not enslaved in the sense that those who came straight from the continent were enslaved. According to many Europeans, they're more refined because they're closer to the European, right? And so these women had costly jewels and they had feathers and they had ability and they had access and they were marrying on the left hand these men and their women, and they were kept. Let me see if I could kept women. So that's kind of what I wanted to share here, so that let me show you. Wait. Um, Any questions or comments, or anybody want to come up? Let me drop the link real quick. I'm not going to stay long. Let me just drop the link. If you want to come up and share your thoughts about what was shared. And we're going to be back tomorrow and have an interesting discussion. That's the link. Let me know if you want to come up and let your voice be heard while I look at one of these. So this interracial conversation has been happening for different segments of society. It's not a new thing. That movie, Feast of All Saints. I don't know how many people have seen that movie. Let me pull it up. Feast of All Saints. If you want to learn more about the Plasage conversation in movie form, it was a book as well. I didn't read the book, but it was a movie. And it dealt with the situation that many mixed people find themselves in. I did a video a couple of years ago about passing. A lot of people are mad, like at the Rachel Dolezals and those types, but it has happened on two sides. So I'm trying to figure out if we only mad when it happens when the person is passing for Black, but not so mad when many people pass for white. People were passing for a while. You know what I mean? Quadroons acted if they could pass, they would pass. In the movie, what movie was that? There was a movie. Halle Berry was playing the character, and she's like, "Eyes white now," and she was passing until they figured out who she was, right? So this is not a new conversation. People are going to go to where they feel as though they feel they can get the benefits, and if they can pass, they're gonna pass, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, right? So this is not new. I don't know why we act like some of the stuff that's happening. Queen, thank you, sweetie. That's the name of the movie, Queen. And she's like, I was white now. You know what I mean? But then when it's beneficial, she goes around the melanated people. And then when she wants to advance in society, she goes around the European people. There's another like older film when the woman she passed as well, and then she went away from home, and then I think she doesn't get back to her mother until the mother's in funeral. What was the name of that? That was another movie as well. My point being, and there's books about Black people sharing about their experience of passing, right? So this part of the culture, for some, when they want to say their colorism exists, and you don't want to claim somebody because they didn't have your same experience, and then you wouldn't be claiming what happened to them. They would be like, "Hey, you can't talk about Tignon. That was my experience." Imitate CT is on it today. There we go. CT, you on it today. The name of the movie that I was just talking about is Imitation of Life, right? That's the name of that movie. If you want to look at passing, Queen is the name of the other movie. If we want to look at passing, Queen T, what's up? Welcome. And the other movie is Feast of All Saints. If you want to look at Plasage and begin to read about what was actually happening in Louisiana with these matchmaking spaces, these quadroon balls. That's the name of it, the quadroon ball. I don't want to wait. Yeah, the name of it is. So as I'm talking, I'm going to share you a little something here. Each one teach one. It was a totally different culture. A totally different culture. Yeah. These quadroon balls, yeah, they have a whole different history where they would have these balls, and this is where they would meet these high value men, and they would be groomed and prepared to be kept, for them to be acquired and kept. So if you want to look up quadroon balls, let me see here, go ahead. There's articles on it, there's videos on it. The article on Plasage talked about it. Quadroon for beginners. That's crazy. Quadroon for beginners. Hold on, let me jump down and see if they talk about the quadroon ball right here. Inheritance. So basically, my point of bringing this, for those who just joined us, is that the Tignon Law was specifically in Louisiana, and it affected at that time mixed people. Here it is. Quadroon balls. The term quadroon is a fractional term referring to a person with one white and one mulatto parent. Some courts would have considered one-fourth Black. The quadroon balls were social events designed to encourage mixed race women to form liaisons with wealthy white men, high value. So this swirling conversation, this divert is not new, through a system of concubinage known as plasage. The origin of the quadroon balls can be traced to the, not even about to do it. In Cap Francis in the French colony of Saint Domingue, which is Haiti, right? Which was one of the richest before all that popped off. That's why a lot of people, when they left Haiti after the revolution, they came to Louisiana. In the French colony, the male population outnumbered women. So at every point in history, there's some imbalance in the numbers. In this particular colony, the male population outnumbered women. White women were few, and there were few alternatives to prostitution for free women of color. The colony was known in the Caribbean for its mulatto courtesans, whose trademark was elegance, a haughty demeanor, and the demand to be courted. So even the stigma of, oh, light skin, high yellow, All of these tropes and stereotypes that came up into present day, they're coming from somewhere. As there were no brothels in the colony and sex workers worked independently, these balls were the place where the most exclusive courtesans met their clients. Having met, they were set up as the official housekeeper, manager, or openly kept as mistress. When their male client died or left to settle in France for their retirement, they were normally left with money, property, or slaves for their future support. This was a common background for the free colored women, business women, among whom the most famous was Nanette Pinsmali and Anne Laporte, Simon Brocard, and Julie Dahey. Many refugees from Saint Domingue, which is Haiti, came to New Orleans and settled after the outbreak of the Haitian Revolution in 1791 until the Domingue Refuge colony in Cuba was ousted in 1809. These were white, black, and free people of color who were used to the Plasage system in Saint Domingue and who introduced a formalized form of Plasage as well as the famous quadroon balls in New Orleans. And this is a picture of the ball. You see the head do? Yeah, I'm acting like y'all can see it. You see their head wraps? You see the tignons? You see how high they are? You see them still dressed up? You see the melanated man who's enslaved right here? I don't know if you can see my picture. You see the people sitting on the floor? It was still a class system. You see this other person sitting on the floor? It wasn't talking about them. It wasn't talk. You see those people here in the back here in the little corner? Let me see if I can make this bigger. Why I can't make stuff bigger? There we go. We see? So we see the enslaved class, and then we see another class of mixed peoples who were getting with the European in their tignons. What's that about? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Queen T is in New Orleans. Queen T says, I'm in New Orleans, and there are still really fair-skinned people around here, 7th Ward. And Queen T is in New Orleans, and she goes on to say, absolutely, and some only mate with each other. A guy who liked me in high school said he couldn't bring me home. I was too dark. So when we talk about culture and we talk about history and we talk about the effects, we have to be, to the best of our ability, because we're just reading on accounts, intellectually honest. And if we're talking about bonding, that's a different conversation. I said all that to say that's a different conversation. Bondage is a different conversation. Wow, Queen T, that's crazy. But you know that happens where even in the Caribbean, this conversation of, oh, you guys had a different experience. No, a lot of the experiences are the same. Colorism is real. But what happened oftentimes in the Caribbean is what I noticed is that if you had a very dark melanated person, male or female, for some reason, they would be more inclined towards the lighter complexion person, right? And it can be male or female. And if for some reason in their minds, it balances the thing out, right? If the male was red, he would look for a darker skinned woman. And if the woman was dark, she would look for, and I'm like, well, what was that about? You know what I mean? I don't know. It may have had a different effect here, where here it's like, nah, if you're darker, then, and if two people were dark, they would say, nah, those two people can't come together because of the stigma that it's going to have on the child, right? So when we act as though there weren't benefits for being lighter and there weren't benefits for being mixed, we're not being honest. But I see we have a T Dawn in the house. I'm gonna bring it to the top, and then you could click on if you would like to share your thoughts, and then we're gonna wrap up. T Dawn, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amuna. I guess I just had lots of thoughts. I guess the be when it comes to race, when it comes to Black people, when it comes to all of that, I would just say
Mm-hmm.
that my formal education about race, my formal education about quote unquote black people apart from just understanding what it is, from school, where we descended from, and specifically my lineage and my ethnicity being that, descended from slaves. Um, all of my formal education didn't start until my late 30s. So I always I'm amazed whenever I see this sort of research and I see what looks like history repeating itself, and
Mm-hmm.
then us not being honest about what it really was. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I, I I was so confused about race, and I keep saying that because I stood about race the one drop rule. If you had one drop of quote unquote African blood, you considered non-white. So the reason I'm bringing all of this up, Amuna, is because I thought about Brazil
Mm-hmm.
and how they have so many different directly from descended from the continent, knowing maybe your specific tribe. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because we don't do that here in America. And I'm just trying to figure out, Amuna, I need to find information from 1800s to, let's say, maybe the 1920s. What were black people doing to quote unquote be unified and call themselves one people? That's where I need to study because I'm just trying to figure it out.
From so you say from
But
18.
I just found
Mhm.
what you brought out. Just
No, go
I
ahead.
just want to know, like, you know, I guess I just want to know from even like the late 1800s to maybe like the 1920s, because I'm thinking about, this one specific area in Louisiana, which, from what I understood, these people don't even consider themselves quote unquote black. So,
Mm-hmm.
where did we get our unification to say that we are quote unquote, at the time, which I really prefer to say Negro,
Mm.
because it helps streamline what I'm trying to describe. So, anyway, I have a lot of thoughts, Amuna. I just found what you presented so thought provoking. And the bonnet conversation is so draining to me only because I think that when it comes to, say, like you said, self pride, how you want to present yourself in public, come on. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just going to just
Yeah.
mute my mic. Thank you for this
No, I
opportunity.
feel you. I'm confused at how we hear. There's so much to do, but how we hear. I feel you on that. As it relates to research, over the years I've done a lot of research, and in recent years I've done personal family genealogy, like that no one was able to really tell me and guide me on. And when they just gave me a few names, and I was able to go back like 5 generations. And so I would say to those who may be interested, what it does is open up your eyes. We've been just like we see now all over. People will just throw something out there and they just keep moving, just keep dotting across the thing. And you're like, wait a minute, hold up, come back. And one of those things is this thought of that there's been unity, this high level of unity. No, that's not true. There has not been this monolithic people called Black people who've always gotten along, and that's not true. It's not true.
Muna,
So, mhm. So when you want to, for me, my experience, what I've learned is these resources. There are a lot of resources at our disposal. We're just not using them, right? Every state, to a certain degree, like I said, they have digital libraries. Some more information than others. If you want to look at a certain state, like I said, Louisiana, for instance, and you have names or you have locations, then you will begin to go into the records. There's one thing that I used, and I think they were in the Caribbean, they have a lot of records, right? And I think they also have records here. So once you have the names of the people you're looking up, and once you have the location, you're gonna have to do a lot of the groundwork and really hone in on what you're trying to understand about the place. That's going to determine the methodology, how you're going to go about researching this. I love researching. People like, you like digging? I love researching, but it takes a level of patience and commitment to truth, because when you research, You don't know what you're going to come back with, right? You don't know what's going to come up. You thought one thing, and then it's another thing. And then you have to also understand, like that article I just shared from Louisiana. Where is it? From the Louisiana Digital Archives. We have to understand that the article has a tone. The weekly Picayune. If I would like take that one little piece of information and look it up, and then say who's writing this thing, what. So I would take it with a grain of salt, even though they're confirming the origin of Tignon. We know that the article is tinted. We know that the article tinted is because of the way it sounds. So it would be like an opinion piece with some factual information in it, right? And so I would go to look for information that is going to substantiate what the claim is. And I think a lot of us today are just not taking the time. It's there. We can do it. And it's going to take a lot of people to cover all the ground that needs to be covered. But for instance, before this Tignon conversation, there are Negro codes that come into play. I was going to read that tonight, but another day. Negro codes that come into play, but these codes were formulated in South Carolina in addition to the Code Noir, but these were in response to the Stonewall Rebellion. So when we look at things, everything has context. Why are they writing up all these laws where they start? And in those laws, they started regulating what melanated people could wear and what they couldn't wear. Why? Because melanated people were getting part of their escape to freedom is that they would get access to the slave masters' clothing. And I read stories of them dressing up as, the person who could pass for white, they would dress that person up as the male. And then he acting like he's taking his slave to freedom. And this is how people were able to navigate. So the European, once they find people rebellion, they went through everything that was done for this thing to be successful and made laws against every single thing. If you see them talking together, if you see them having conversation, we'll go back over it. So then the laws have context and we understand what exactly they were trying to achieve and how it still affects us today. Like Queen T said, something that happened then brought all the way up into this time, and it affected her because that mentality was still in the culture and the population. Uh-oh, my computer about to die. Hold on. Yeah, hold on now. Go ahead, T Dawn. Let me try to find a plug for this thing real quick.
Thank you, Amuna. My God, on today, that's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and like you said, I'm going to have to get into that digital research and do my due diligence to really just do my own lineage to understand, the origins of my specific lineage, and then I think I'll just go from there. That'll give me plenty to do, I think. Thank you so much for your time, Amuna, and all your research.
Thank you so much. So I feel a little illustrative today. So I'm gonna give y'all an example of one of the sites I use, right? And this one is a lot of things to begin with is free on this site. So hold on, I had to plug my computer in. So here's an example of a site I use. Anything and everything, like I say, Wikipedia, articles, state websites, pamphlets, they all have information. It's like when I was trying to figure out who sent me the headphones. Like I am like Inspector Gadget. I'm like, okay, every little piece of information could lead you in the right direction. And shout out, you know who you are who said the headphones. Shout out. He was like, you're not supposed to know, but you know what I mean? I'm one of the investigators. So let me share something with you. Let me close some of these things. Let me give you some real time. It took me a long time, years actually, but I started a while ago. And here's an example. Here's an example of the site. Okay. This is the site. It's called Family Search, right? Family Search is free. Okay. There are all these things. People can populate the site, or the site could already have things in there. If you put in the names of the people you're looking for, I'm just going to put America, and let's say the last name of the people are Jones, but you don't know the first name. And say you're going to be, so they were born in Louisiana. Let's say they were born in South Carolina. A lot of great stuff was going on in South Carolina, right? Say you press search. Say a lot of stuff come up. Now this is like, where do I start? Where do I start? Where do I start? So then you get information from your family. This is, again, this is a free site. Say I don't know. Say you know your granny name was Alberta Jones, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I did hear about Grandpa such and such. Then say you click on it. Now some stuff is going to come up. This is all the information that can help you pinpoint and begin to put together the tree, right? Alberta Jones, she was a female, birth date 13th of January 1925. She was colored. Father's name was John. This is a lot of information. They even give you, what I like about this site is that they even give you specifics. You can actually see the writings that the people had, right? So this site right here is very powerful. It has a lot of information on there. And then from there, you can find your way. So that's one of the sites that I often use to, I have, my parents are like, what in the world? Like, I have one grandmother who is in her 90s. And so she's the last of the Mohicans. She has still a good memory. I ask her questions. I've been I was that person asking questions. I ask the questions. I call my maternal grandmother's dead, but I call her daughter who has a lot of information, and I just start writing it down. It's going to take some time, but it can be done as long as you have a bit of details, and you'll be surprised at what you find. So that site right there, Family Search, is a good site. It would definitely help you on your way. Yeah, I could show people how to do it, but I'll just say it's going to take some patience and some will. You'll find, like I found that there was a lot of babies dying. They have the causes of death, what time, who was there, who signed the birth certificate. The fact that they kept calling people spinsters. I wanted to come and have that conversation. Like, why do y'all keep calling people spinsters? Like, especially in the Caribbean, like in America, they had different terminology. But in the Caribbean, if the woman wasn't married, they'd call her a spinster. So I'm over here looking at them calling my ancestors spinsters. I was like, yo, y'all are doing the most right now. But the man, he just gets to be called bachelor. You know what I mean? He gets to be called bachelor and she gets to be called spinster. Yeah, I mean, right now, and Queen T says she started in college, but have some and lost along the way. There's some that you have. You want to hire me? I'm like a PBS special, the private eye. I mean, I could go in there for you. I definitely could go in there for you. I told my parents what I'm gonna gift to the family is I'm gonna put it all together with all of the supporting documentation that I found and put it in a book for them. And they do with it whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? But it's definitely a labor. It's a labor of love. But when you find it and you begin to connect the dots and you begin to really understand certain things, it kind of gives you a peace. Certain questions that I used to have, I'm like, oh, all right, I'm good. I even found, I'll tell y'all one more wild thing and I'm gonna let y'all go. The wildest thing, I found many wild things, but one of the wildest things I found was my great grandmother my grandmother had a sister. Was it? Yeah, my grandmother had a sister who died as a child, born on the exact same day that I was born. That freaked me out. Like, I had to back up. I was like, what? So, and I'm trying to figure out, what happened, what they recorded back then. And it freaked me out when I realized that this child who never made it, was born. I came back and like less than 100 years later, born on that exact same day. That's some crazy stuff. That's some crazy stuff. But yeah, it's a process. Holla at me, Queen T. Let's see what I can do. Um, you just got to collect the data and try to get as much information as you can, so that, because what happens is, back in the day, what I realized, a lot of people would name the same thing. I don't know if they just had like a baby naming book with like 5 names in there, but a lot of people had the same names. So you're going to have some other identifying markers to help with the process. But it can be done. So with that said, hopefully that was helpful. I know I went off a little bit, but that Tignon conversation had me going. Tomorrow, like I said, shout out, we're gonna have a celebrity stylist. She's been makeup artist. She's done many celebrities over the years. She is very adept in the understanding of grooming, public image, and public perception. Um, and she's going to have the conversation beyond bonnets and things, but we're going to have the conversation of our image, and how important is it, and how we got to where we are today. You know what I mean? Of people really thinking that how you present yourself doesn't matter. Before the other person, one of the things, as we talk about solonomics and healing and getting ourselves together, one of the things, when someone is depressed, when you think about it, because I was asking my 13-year-old, like, what do you think about this bonnet conversation? And she was like, well, maybe they don't care. I'm like, yeah, that's a possibility. Or maybe they're depressed. Like, I mean, some people may see like you're not depressed, but if someone gets depressed, right, you may get into where you don't want to groom yourself, or you don't want to put yourself together. You don't want to get out of bed. There's all kind of things that people, when you get to a certain state of, it doesn't matter, even though you may not be outright depressed. There has to be something along the way where you no longer care, right? And then you make up reasons as to why you no longer care, right? That means that something is going on with us. Because to intellectualize brushing your teeth and washing your face in the morning before you step out into the public. And here's one more thing. I know I'm going to go off a little bit, but when we step out into the public and we're telling people to mind their business, we are now in the communal space. So how you show up to a certain degree is someone else's business. This is why when Lizzo showed up to the Lakers game, I don't know if y'all remember that, with her whole entire booty hanging out, there was an uproar because you came to a public setting, right, with your booty cheeks on the. It's late, go to sleep. Like, you came to a public setting, and people are like, it's not you. It's not. It's now the person's business because you are in their space, which makes it their business. Yes, no. So the reasoning shows that there got to be something else happening. And hopefully the clinicians, the therapists, the coaches, we can stop playing games out here in these streets and just telling people what they want to hear, and politicizing everything. Queen T over here yeah, we're making everything like identity politics and respectability. I'm like, come on. One more thing. Back in the day, you never met your father? Yeah, holla at me, you guys. That's the email is in the box. Link me up, and I'll try to help you at least begin to start on the gathering of the data journey. But what was I saying? I was saying something, y'all. What I was saying? Oh. Here's one thing what we have to understand about what we're seeing in my observation. And I'm gonna use, y'all know I like analogies. I'm gonna use braces for an example. When you go to the orthodontist for braces, it is because you may have an overbite, you may have an underbite, your teeth, there may not be enough space in your teeth, there may be overcrowding. So you go to the dentist, and the orthodontist looks at your teeth to see what needs to be fixed and how they're going to go about fixing it. That's number one. So they assess you. They have to do a mold imprint. I know because I had braces. And this is back in the day. This wasn't Invisalign. Right? So they have to do an assessment of your mouth. You have to give them an indentation. All of these things before they even touch you, before they even set a plan out, they have to see where everything is currently. After they do that and they analyze what's going on, then they put together a plan of what they're going to do first. Oh, we need to move this over here first. We need to take out this. We need to do this in order to shift things for everything to get into place. After that happens, which is painful. This is back in the day braces. It's painful. Okay. There's times when you get your braces tightened up. I couldn't even eat. My mouth was hurting. Okay, great. Once you get to the point that critical mass, once you get to the point where they say your teeth are straight, this is where it's supposed to be. If you don't take those braces off, if they don't get to you in time to remove those braces, can anybody here tell me what's going to happen? You're going to overcorrect the problem. So there's a point as we're having a conversation about what happened to what is happening, right? Where the problem can meet this place where it is balanced. And once you pass that point, it overcorrects the problem and creates another issue on the other side. So coming out of enslavement, coming out of the space of oppression, still to a certain degree with microaggressions and oppression, when people become hypersensitive to feedback, everything now has to be racist. Everything has to be the oppression of such. Now you have overcorrected. You've gone from making your voice be heard to now oppressing. This is the cancel culture, oppressing everybody and everything that does not feed into your narrative. That's when the situation has been overcorrected. And just in my assessment of what's going on, we have come to that point. For instance, in the male women, if you go from misogyny to extreme feminism and you didn't stop somewhere where you need him and he needs you, you have gone beyond. You have gone beyond. Like some of these conversations, to me, it looks like the end. What is your end game? What is the end game? If the male is saying he does not like the woman and he doesn't need her, and she's saying she doesn't, end game means y'all are done. What in the world? The problem has been overcorrected, which has created a new problem. And so people are there blaming it on feminism. And it's not necessarily, it's when you have now overreached. If the masculine energy is too much, that's a problem. That's dysfunction. When the feminine energy does not have any boundaries, that's dysfunction. That's a problem. And the two energies are meant to balance one another. When you have excessive amounts of males grouping together and just carrying on and feeding that energy, it's not going to stop. There's nothing there. There's no boundary there. In the same way, when all or nothing but women come together and they're feeding a certain energy, where are you going to stop at? Who's going to be like, hey, I think we've gone too far. You know what I mean? We have gone too far. What is wrong with you? And I'm looking and listening and like, y'all are tripping. Like, are you really thinking about the next generation? Anywho, I just have to say that because to me, the problem has overcorrected itself. And now your teeth are going in. They went beyond being straight and now they're bent the other way. Yeah, the dressing thing. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow because these are just common grooming necessities, right? How in the world, are we okay with it's nighttime here, going to sleep in your clothes and then getting up and going outside in said clothes that you slept in? Like where we do this stuff at? This is nothing to do with politics. Come on, man. It's cleanliness. And you know what came to my mind? I was like, oh, wait a minute, Umuna. What came to my mind was TLC waterfalls. I'm like, let me find out that Lisa Left Eye and T-Boz was over there priming the generation. I'm gonna pull up a picture in case y'all have forgotten. With this stuff right here, right here. Who remembers this? Oopsie. Who remembers this? If anybody has anything else to say, let me know. Yeah, see, that's why I don't do much live streams at night, because then who was outside in their pajamas chasing waterfalls? Where they went? In the pajamas. But they ain't have no bonnets on though. Where's the pajama scene? The one when they was in the silky pajamas, man. Wait. Hold on. Yeah. No. Maybe it was a different song. It was a different Creep. I think this is the song for Creep, ain't it? Yeah. I think this is a different song. But nonetheless, they was in their pajamas and drawers. See? And then people started, they started doing this. So, I mean, it's been a long time coming. And somebody else mentioned this. And we can talk about it, where before the bonnets, there were rollers. And who remembers Big Worm from Friday movie with the rollers in his hair? So this type of, I'm going to take some of the outside thing and bring the inside stuff and bring it outside is not new. And it's not just one race of people. Again, I'm in Florida and I see some wild stuff, y'all. So it's not just Black people, as some will say. I see some ghettofied behavior from all nationalities of people. Okay, so I live in a place where they have to tell you no shirt, no service, no shoes, no service, right? So they will try some stuff. Come in with no shoes, no shirt, the pants hanging down, and you look up and it's different nationality of people. It's not just one nationality. So let me read this and I'm gonna go. My apologies if my comments are out of context. Yeah, there's no problem. You could comment. Yeah, it's headgear for nighttime. It's like no more. It's like it's like things are. It's like when you were little and the children. Like I got little children and they do the book, and you say what's out of place. This person wears this, and where are they going? Oh, to the beach. You know what I mean? The fireman has on his fire clothes. Oh, he's going to go fight fires. You know, you have on your nightie and bonnet. Oh, you're going to sleep. And they're like, no, I'm going to the airport. You're like, what? So you know, it is what it is, y'all. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This has been. I went to go look at Peg Bundy to see if Peg Bundy combed her hair, but she did. Peg Bundy used to put on clothes. She combed her hair. But that they was clowning her too, because I think on the low, Al was kind of Magtal. He wanted to leave Peg. Remember what's the name of that show? Married with Children. But Peg was fit. What they say, she was fit. She just didn't cook though. Who remembers Peg Bundy, yo? All right, everybody. I'm about to go to sleep now. We'll see you guys tomorrow in the evening. And everybody have a blessed night.